Call the meeting to order, please. This is the Village of Riverside Board of Trustees regular meeting for Thursday, April 18th, 2019. The time is 7 p.m. Please call the roll.
President Stubbs.
Here.
Trustee Selby. Here. Trustee Peters. Here. Trustee Lumsden.
Here.
Trustee Pollock.
Here.
Trustee Galvin.
Here.
Trustee Giza.
Here.
Village Manager Francis.
Here.
Village Attorney Molina.
Here.
Also present, Village Clerk Haley.
Thank you. If you'll please join us for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and welcome to everyone who is here with us this evening, and to those of you watching at home. If you're here with us tonight and you'd like to make a comment to the board at any time, I ask that you be recognized by the president and that you make your comments from the podium so that folks at home can hear and see what you have to say. First up this evening are presentations and public comment, and we're very fortunate to have with us this evening the CEO of Brookfield Zoo, Dr. Stuart Strahl, and he's going to give us an update on what's going on at our favorite neighbor. Dr. Strahl.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. I'm going to talk. You have in front of you our current strategic plan that we passed about a year ago, a little bit less than a year ago. And it talks about inspiring, engaging, and restoring. Inspiring people to care about wildlife and nature, engaging them in activities that promote their understanding through STEM education and also at the zoo, but off the zoo in communities as well, which we do a lot of. And then restoring that connection and that ongoing connection between people and wildlife and nature. It's not a big surprise to anybody that with 87% of Americans living in highly urbanized areas, people have lost touch with wildlife and nature. And in many of the communities we work with on the west and south side, the only contact kids have with animals and wildlife are the animals and wildlife we bring to them, or the ones that they come out here to see. So quite a few of our guests are now come in with free passes from public libraries. They have them in your public library as well, but also through community-based organizations as well as traditional school groups. But I'd like to talk today about some of the things that we are that we are as an institution, and some of the things we aspire to be, and also our new exhibit that we're developing where the former Baboon Island, aka Monkey Island from the old days, was. So we are the most popular paid cultural attraction and ticketed cultural attraction in the Midwest. We average about 2.2 million guests, except for last year, which had some wonderful weekend weather, as you may recall, in the summer, and freeze out in the winter, and so we dipped down below 2 million for the first time since 2005. So we've done a pretty good job growing our attendance from an average of about 1.9 million to 2.2. A lot of that has been because we've done a lot more outreach, leaving the zoo and going into communities, making it popular for the citizenry of Cook County, who have another zoo downtown that's a little bit smaller, and a great zoo, great urban zoo. So we have won just about every year, with the exception, I think, of one or two where people got bored with writing applications, national awards from the Association of Zoo and Aquaria, more national awards than any other large institution in the country. And a lot of that has to do with not just some of the breeding programs we have and some of the exhibits we have and some of the marketing we do, but a lot of it was about diversity and about engaging people and engaging communities. So you'll see some of the award-winning things here, but we have about 4,000 students engaged in communities in STEM learning. Nature Start, which is the early childhood education programs and facilitated play behavior that we do here at the zoo, but also in communities around the region. We've won the Diversity Award several times now, and we have about 200,000 kids in field trips. But the other thing that we've done is work a lot with children and families with developmental disabilities. if you really want to see the power of animals, and there was just an article recently the Detroit Zoo did, which also has this sense of people-animal bond, and they were talking about what presence of animals, but what seeing animals do. So they had control groups who saw, I can't remember what the other two things were, but animals was the third thing. Heart rate goes down, breathing rate goes down, because endorphins are pumping into your brain. So if you really want to see the effect of that, we've worked with kids. We just had Zoos Go Blue with Autism Speaks, and autism spectrum kids have fewer receptors for endorphins in their brain. But when they have a pulse of endorphins around animals, the hyperactivity stops, the focus comes back, and eye contact. It's a really remarkable thing, and we did some work with Advocate Healthcare on that. And we also do work with kids who are aging out of their individual education programs and are trying to get into the workplace. We employ quite a few of those kids, and we've worked with LODSE and a couple of others, helping hands to train a lot of people. So the educational part for us is really important, and the science part is as well. Late we had one of our more prominent pups this last year was a giant anteater pup, and has been on exhibit. As you can see, the giant anteater pup grabs on the back of the female and wanders around. It doesn't wander around, it just hangs on. The last pup was named Velcro, and I don't remember which one this one's named, but it's the largest species of anteaters. We also have an echidna. An echidna, on the next page, is one of the oldest animals at the zoo. It's like a beaked porcupine, but it's not really a porcupine. It's an egg-laying mammal from Australia, and there are only two of them. One is the echidna, the other is the platypus. This Adelaide, our short-beaked echidna, turned 50 this year. So fascinating creatures. We also, the Zoos Go Blue was April 6th, and I talked about the National Autism Awareness Month. Zoos Go Blue is now a national thing. It started with us and Autism Speaks, but it's gone to many other zoos around the country. Likewise, we're working with Wounded Warrior Project and with the Road Home program and the VA. We have a lot of vets coming back with PTSD, survivor's guilt, and other things, and blast trauma. And animals are great for veterans. So we've got a very lively, when we have our warrior ride come in, we usually turn out a few hundred people to line the walkways, and when we do that, I know that your police department and fire department, not a good day to have a fire because they're going to be over there greeting the gang, but they've done a great job working with us, and we make a difference there. So Autism Speaks, we had 7,000 people this year for the event, which is great. The other thing we do, people always ask me, not always ask me, but I have a lot of kids, mostly in high school, who say, well, animals should be in the wild and not in captivity. And that's a common buzz phrase. It rolls off the tongue really well, and I'm a scientist, and I did a lot of work in South America and elsewhere before I decided to come back and be where the people are. And I can tell you that if you look at globally, the standing biomass, or all the weight of all the land mammals in the world, humans are about 32%, livestock is about 63%, and the 5% that's left is wildlife for land mammals. So when people say that, well, where should they be in the wild? Because anywhere they are, I'm sure you saw in Africa how you've got agriculture and livestock, and right up to the edge of every one of those national parks, and it's a real problem. And those are the things that are now things that we have to think about. But one of the two centers we started with back when I came in 2003, 2004, our first strategic plan was, how do we have the best welfare of any zoo in the galaxy? We haven't tested the intergalactic sense of it, but we have been working with strengthening our scientific program, strengthening how we do our welfare studies. Both we can monitor hormones and everything else and behavior, but we also have a 50-year study of bottlenose dolphins going on down in Sarasota Bay, which is a fascinating study. It's the longest running study, contiguous study of cetacean anywhere in the world. And it was used as the benchmark for defining what happened after the Deepwater Horizon oil spill with all the marine mammals along the coastal zones, which was not so happy up there in Louisiana. So this little thing on top of this dolphin's head is attached with suction cups. It has a little impeller, so when it turns, it can measure the speed the dolphin's going in. It has depth sensors. It measures what level they are in the water. And we can compare that with the studies we have of dolphins down in Sarasota, because we do the same thing with them. And so this is one of our guys. We have a study that now includes 44 institutions around the world with dolphins, looking at how do you define the best welfare standards for dolphins, and how does that compare to dolphins in the wild. On the lighter side, on the next page, you have the fabulous brick safari, millions of Lego bricks, life-size animals made out of Legos. It's one of those things that I yearn for every year, Lego bricks. Well, I used to when I was not that tall. But anyway, they're coming out. It's the first time this exhibit has been in the U.S. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's driving a lot of membership sales right now because everybody loves Legos. One day, I could not turn off the little set sometimes you have in the back of a seat of a plane seat, and it was a Lego movie. And it was kind of like one of those, tape my eyes open because it was one of those late flights, and I couldn't believe it. People actually watch that stuff. But anyway, Legos are really cool, and so that's going to be a good exhibit for us this year. We're different from the downtown cultural attractions, as you probably know, because the majority of our guests, like 80 to 90%, depending on the time of year, come from drive-in, the surrounding area. Most of the downtown's institutions have about 70% are coming from out-of-town tourism and being sold as tour packages. So we're like the homegrown zoo. And so when you look at our membership, we have at least one member in every legislative district in the state, even down in Metropolis, where the Daily Planet is, way down south, everywhere, and people drive hours to come to us, and also from neighboring Michigan and Indiana, of course, and Iowa and Wisconsin. So in Riverside, we have 1,220 member households. That's about allegedly 39%. You would know better than me of all your households here. We have 30 employees, 19 volunteers, 970 student and teacher visits on free field trips, and 7 of our King Conservation Science Scholars. That group started out as a youth volunteer corps. In fact, my first year, Jennifer here was a youth volunteer. And she has a photo with me and a bunch of other people to prove it. My hair was not this color at that time, or it had color at that time anyway. It's not really gray, it's ash, by the way. So this program has grown dramatically. We now have about 300 kids in our King Conservation Science Scholars from 153 different high schools around the region, and 65% of them are kids from under-resourced communities of color. And 100% of them are going to college. And the majority of them are going into STEM fields. We have a kid who's first in her family ever, Mexican-American, to go to college. She got a scholarship and was very concerned about she wouldn't make it. A scholarship to Notre Dame, and last year she was our presenter at our Black Tie Gala, which is coming up a week from Saturday. And she got a scholarship to go to Cornell Vet School. And she was elected in her first semester as one of the class officers. So there's a lot of stories like that that we have coming out of those groups. Very successful, working across all sorts of socioeconomic boundaries and ethnic boundaries. It's a wonderful group of people, and it's going to grow probably double in size over the next 10 years. You enjoy a $165,000 eating tax revenue from all the people who chow down on this side of the zoo, and there's a few other things. There's a lot of other benefits that you guys have because it's a really fun place to be. And believe it or not, some people think that our restaurant food is not spectacular, and they do patronize a lot of local establishments. I even do, instead of going to the, Choo Choo and other places here. We hosted the Riverside Chamber of Commerce for an after-hour event in 2018. Hope to do it again this year. Presented on the history of the zoo and the Riverside Library here, and as part of the Frederick Law Olmsted's lecture series, and hosted the Reflections on Riverside Poetry Contest. So this is L.J. Hauser Junior High School top honors in our science fair this year, just so you know. They're probably learning their STEM education from fabulous teachers here in Riverside and us. This year is the 100th anniversary of the donation of land from Edith Rockefeller McCormick, 83 acres with hundreds of parcels to the Forest Preserve, and then the Forest Preserve bought adjacent land. And we just had a Alta survey of all meets and bounds and ownership and everything you could possibly imagine dating back to the beginning of time. And I don't know if you know this, but Riverside Brookfield High School, because I've watched the video, you all should too, was on the western half of the site it occupies now. The eastern half was part of the lots along First Avenue that Edith Rockefeller McCormick donated. And those lots were traded somehow for what is now our south parking lot. So the bonds with the high school go back that far. So the anniversary, we have a former, if anybody needs some, we have another pallet, I think, or two. The book called Let the Lions Roar, which is the unexpurgated history of the zoo, written by Frederici Ross. Hang on a second. Sorry. This is an off day for me. Anyway, Andrea Federici Ross, and she has done a unexpurgated biography of Edith Rockefeller McCormick that's going to be published by A University Press. She won't tell me which, about a year and a half from now. So we'll be able to celebrate that for some time. And then in 2021, in the spring, it will be the 100th anniversary of the foundation of the Chicago Zoological Society, which was founded by the Forest Preserve's commissioners, saying we need to have a private organization who knows how to run a zoo and build a zoo to do that, and we should step out of it. So it's been a public-private partnership that goes back to 2021. And so a few years ago, we were able to transform our children's zoo, here's the 1953, into Wild Encounters. And for those of you who hadn't fed the parakeets or hung out with our very needy goats, they're always willing. And Wild Encounters has been great because it has lots of teachable moments and places where people can interact with animals, and also with lots of lectures with our ambassador animals. And that ambassador animal building is a lot better than Jack Hanna's place over in Columbus. Ha! In fact, we had a meeting to establish the welfare of program animals and ambassador animals here at the zoo. So we do a lot of original children's zoo, had lots of little things, small animals and reptiles. Now that program, that ambassador animal program, travels outside the zoo to places where kids would otherwise not be able to see animals like this and interact with them. So that's one of the things that changes people's lives. It changed mine when I was a kid, and that program is going to grow as well. So the next photo is one of the original photos of Monkey Island, 1936. If you look in there, there are these little crates, and this is when the first Guinea baboons were released onto Monkey Island, which had a moat, as you see, with water in it before before it deteriorated so much that the water leaked into the aquifer. So that was 1936, and as you know, it became known as Baboon Island because they were apes, not monkeys. And after hosting generations of Guinea baboons, we tried to refresh the genotype there with some additions, but it's very difficult to put new baboons in with baboons who have been hanging around for generations. So in any case, it stood empty for a while, and now we're announcing to you and others that the Hamill family, who has been a fabulous patron of ours, we're transforming that former concrete slab into a teaching science and nature plaza. So this will open sometime either in late August or beginning of September, but it's going to be a good place for events. And if you look at the photo with all the little tiny numbers on it, there are different areas of this exhibit that have science learning, and there's a sensory garden for kids with disabilities who touch and feel and smell and all of that. There's also a pavilion in the middle, which is not a year-round pavilion. It's sort of a summer pavilion where we can have program animals come out, have events, weddings, etc. And then there are lots of other little areas. It's sort of a prairie. A prairie purist would say, oh no, it has to be just like this. And this one is not, this is probably a little bit less of a boring prairie. It's an exciting prairie with colors in it and that sort of thing, but it's not perfect, which is okay, because the science guys, you know, we can get too perfectionist. But we expect this to be a place where kids can enjoy and learn about prairies and things without going to a forest preserve, and then get them into forest preserves as a result of that. So it'll be a fun place. We're also redoing scoops. For those of you who tasted every one of the 24 flavors we had there up until this year, you'll be sad to hear that you were one of a very few number that tasted more than 11. So we're going to have 11 flavors of ice cream, but we're going to have a different thing where the food is cooked outside in a grill. You go in and you get a bun and a plate and fixings, and then you go out and you get your fresh cooked meal outside. So it's going to be very popular. And you'll see some of the special things here, Nature and Science Center. I'm probably way over time, so I'll sort of, and colorful prairie plants, many of them native. The pavilion will look kind of like this, where there are skylights in letting light inside, and very open and airy. And there's places to sit sort of scattered around that can be casual learning places as well. So demolition occurred in December, January. The Scoops renovation is happening right now. The Nature Plaza is, the construction has started, and we should, at the end of August, have it done. It may be a little bit later than that we have it open to the public, though, so, but we'll let you know. So you are one of two. You guys in Brookfield are the two villages that have part of the property within your boundaries, and we're really happy to be working with both of you. North Riverside includes the little slice of woods between Golf Road, 31st Street, and First Avenue. But it's great to have great partners like you all, and let us know what else we can do for you. If you want to have one of your meetings over there, we're ready to go.
Sounds great. Any questions for Dr. Strahl? Comments? No? Well, I would just like to say, I'm not sure that I've had a chance in public person to person to say this to you, but about a year or so ago, we, in conjunction with North Riverside, were able to put a bike path down First
Yeah.
Avenue. And you were extremely cooperative in helping us move the fence back and making some accommodations for us to make that possible. So
Sure.
we really appreciate your neighborliness
That's
on
an
that.
important project. And there's another one that we're just going to try and connect along 31st Street on the Brookfield side. So we'll see what we can do with that.
We feel very fortunate to be your neighbor, and
Likewise.
congratulations on all the good things that are happening.
Likewise.
I want lots and people to go to the zoo, and I want lots and lots of hungry people to go
Yeah,
to the zoo.
especially over on that one side, yeah. And I'd say, you know, the thing about working at the zoo is that every day is a walk in the park.
Right.
You know, it is. And the worst days that we have, whether it's financial or something else that happens, it's great to just go out into the park and see people smiling and kids having a fun time.
It is a
And
wondrul
that's,
place.
That's better than my last jobs.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Appreciate
Thanks for
it.
your patience with my
Thank you.
lack of timeliness.
No, thank you. Our next presentation is apropos, coming after Dr. Straw's comments, and this is regarding a nature project right here in our own backyard, and we have with us the chair of the Landscape Advisory Commission, Kathy Maloney, who's going to tell us about it.
And thank you all for having me today. And it is fitting that we're following the zoo presentation, because if you really want to know where the wild things are, I'm going to invite you to come on to our backyard, where we're going to have a bio blitz on May 11th, which is Saturday. The headquarters will be Scout Cabin. What is a bio blitz, you ask? Well, we're going to have a lot of scientists here from the University of Chicago, the Field Museum, Lincoln Park Zoo, the Morton Arboretum, and a number of other experts. And they will be leading volunteers. Everyone is invited. Volunteers need not have any experience whatsoever, just an ability to listen and spot and identify plants, animals, insects, anything that we see along the natural areas along the river. BioBlitzes are held throughout the world. The idea is within 24 hours, how many different species can you find? And I think we in Riverside are very rich with biodiversity, and this is one activity that we'll be able to do that will help us determine how much biodiversity we have right now, and we'll do it again in another period of time to see if we're doing well or decreasing and so forth. It's sponsored by the Landscape Advisory Commission, the Olmsted Society, and Open Lands has given us some funding for this. There'll be several sessions on Saturday. One of the sessions is geared towards children accompanied by adults. And so it's the first time we've done it. We're kind of trial by fire. I think it'll go really well. The scientists that I've talked to are really accommodating, and they're very excited and interested in the project because it is our sesquicentennial this year. We're an interesting community in that we're only 10 miles away from metropolitan Chicago, so the type of critters that we should be able to see should be sort of interesting. And I'm excited about it in particular because as a landscape commissioner, advisory commissioner, we have no planting plan of what Frederick Law Olmsted wanted for our village. We really don't know what the plants were and, of course, what the creatures were. We have a couple of data points from about the 1870s when different botanists came through the area, and you might have one or two examples in the herbaria that are stored at the field or at the Morton Arboretum, and we can see little dried out plants and so forth of what was here, one or two specimens. But now we can create a census, if you will, of the living creatures and plants that are here in 2019 during our sesquicentennial. It'll be put on a database that is globally accessed by citizen scientists and scientists from around the world. And it'll kind of show people, what we really have here in Riverside in terms of nature. So I hope you all will come out. You can find more information about BioBlitz on eventbrite.com. Just type in Riverside BioBlitz and show up with bug spray and a bottle of water, and we'll take it from there. Questions?
I just have a comment. So the other morning I was driving for the first time ever. I don't know if it was a ostrich or a wild turkey.
Wild turkey.
But there's this huge bird crossing the street. I have a picture of it here. I live along the river, so I see owls and fox and coyotes. But it's the first time I've ever seen that creature in Riverside in my entire life. So before you leave, I'll give you a picture of it. It's kind of interesting. Like the wings, the feathers are different colors and stuff.
It was a wild turkey.
It was a wild turkey.
Wild
Have you seen it?
We've seen several videos of it.
But usually they're in packs, right? This one was traveling solo.
There was,
Right? I mean, I should ask you. You're the expert up behind.
well, there was one.
I'm not.
There was
No.
Well, there was one documented in the city of Chicago. We're not sure whether the one that was seen over on Fairbank and Blooming Bank and all those, whether that's the same one or not. But when Kathy's done, I'll talk a little bit more about birds, and maybe we can get back to the turkey.
It was neat. He's cutting the first
walking
division.
along.
We sent him to the other side of the tracks.
And he was moving. He was moving at a good clip. Yeah.
He's slowing down traffic.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Well, just to follow up on that really briefly, I mean, this is obviously part of a much larger initiative that we've had going on for years now to try to accentuate the natural background, the natural history of Riverside. We all know and love the legacy of Olmsted, but the fact is that Riverside as a place predates Olmsted by hundreds, if not thousands of years. So anything that we can do to get our residents, especially our kids, more aware of the natural environment of Riverside is very important. So I was really delighted that Kathy and the LAC came up with this idea. A partner project with that is going on, actually is just starting on April 21st. This is the second year of our data gathering collection to become an Audubon important bird area. The migratory bird season has really just now underway. We are focusing on the migratory birds that come through Riverside, especially along our riverfront. So we have a team of volunteers who have been assigned to various areas in the village that will rotate over the next several weeks. And if we're lucky, we will get the requisite number of species that we need. This will be our second data gathering year, and we're hoping that will be sufficient to get our Audubon Important Bird Area designation. So with regard to the turkey, we were actually out birding the other day, and a guy that lives on Fairbank came up and had this great video of this turkey just strolling back and forth in front of his garage. So Jill is shaking her head that it's not the same turkey that was in Chicago. So now we have two that are making their way through. Thank God it's not November. Ostrich. Yeah, ostrich. That's right. All right. Thank you very much. Now, time for public comment. Have we talked you to death, or would anyone like to make a comment? Mr. Campbell?
Good evening, President Sells and members of the board. Since we're talking about term limits tonight, I wanted to kind of address that because they are definitely needed. I'm here to advocate for term limits. And, one of the main things that you, President Sells, and Trustee Pollack brought up was the institutional memory that you bring to the process. However, I haven't seen that institutional memory at work. In fact, it seems that you have been more focused on changing the institutional memory into what somebody thinks is currently better, which also includes the communities around us. And this presents itself in terms of the zoning code, where you've made the changes not according to the existing law of Riverside. And that's very troubling because it ignores what others have done before you that they felt was very important. And in addition, we're running in the red. A number of the projects that you have initiated and been very much behind, there was no need to have them done because in that institutional memory is that very information from the past that would have told you everything you needed to know, but saved us tens of thousands of dollars. And So I don't see the institutional memory at work anywhere near as much as changing the institutional memory to, again, this current version of what somebody thinks is right. And the codes aren't followed, we don't get written applications, we don't get notice. We get duplicate information that's useless at the cost of $80,000 when it's all in the village archives. So I don't understand where that institutional memory that you speak of has come into play at all, because the historical Riverside, which is the institutional memory, seems to not be good enough for a lot of people that now have come to the party. And that's very troubling. And as far as the money, the red, you know, started to look at the budgets. There's some very troubling issues. You know, we go through $10 to $12 million a year we spend, and at the last budget presentation that was made, it showed that we had a grand total of $19,000 in the bank. Somehow, if you've got $10 million cash flow to have $19,000 in the bank, I don't know anybody that has a business or anything else that would settle for that low percentage of deposited funds. And we're making scratch off of any kind of investment income or interest. So it brings into, I think, play the way that it's being run financially, and this is all under your watch. And as far as that, I talked to would you perchance have an answer for me, Manager Francis, on the solution that you might propose for the roads?
I'm going to be walking the area with our village engineer and our director of public works to come up with a solution.
Okay, well, you can drive it, because just driving, I spotted about 171 cracks in the first division, and that was at dusk. And they range from just beginning at the gutter line to running all the way across the road and being able to put a drill bit in them. We've spent millions of dollars, and we get 10 months out of the road, except I had called you about a month ago to advise you of the first one that I saw. So if we're getting 10 months or a year out of a road, I don't see any way that we're going to be able to fund the replacement and maintenance of the roads, even with endless and you know, fees, infrastructure fees that just keep going up and up and up. And that also happened on your watch. So I think that 2 terms has been enough historically, because people didn't want to run for a third. But term limits are also to provide a circuit breaker when things in the village are going awry. And to be quite frank, I think a 3rd term, I don't know if Riverside could survive that. So I would advocate that the trustees please also make a motion to change the resolution that's put before us, or before you rather, from 3 terms to 2, and make it retroactive. And we can keep things the way that they've been, the historical Riverside, which seems to work very well, as opposed to the new Riverside that needs to be changed and just continues to bleed money. Thank you.
Anyone else like to address the board? Hearing none, we'll move on to reports of village officers. First up is my report. First thing I would like to do is to congratulate, we have one of them here with us this evening, our new trustees-elect, Chris Evans, Alex Gallegos, and Ed Hannon, who will be taking their seats at our first meeting in May. Congratulations. And the Legos was just for you tonight, Mr. Gallegos. Also, thank you to Trustee Pollock for sitting in while I was in Africa with Jill, although now I understand that I'm expected to have 27-minute meetings, so I'm not sure if you did me any favors. What's that? A standard has been set, exactly. So moving on, I do have 2 motions before you this evening. One is to appoint Dan Durkin to the Board of Fire and Police Commissioners to fill a vacancy, a term to expire 2022. He is replacing Bill Smith, about whom we will have much more to say at a future meeting, given his long tenure on that commission. And the second is a motion to appoint Sean May to the Planning and Zoning Commission to fill a vacancy with a term to expire 2021. He is taking the place of Allison Scanlon, who is stepping down, and we really appreciate the service that Allison has provided to the Planning and Zoning Commission as well. So I'd ask for a motion and a second to appoint Mr. Durkin and Mr. May to their respective commissions. By Mr. Sedovy, second by Mr. Lumsden. Any comment? Please call the roll.
Trustee Sedovy.
Aye.
Trustee Peters.
Aye.
Trustee Lumsden.
Aye.
Trustee Pollak.
Aye.
Trustee Valerie.
Aye.
Trustee Giza.
Aye.
Motion carries. That's all I have this evening. Mr. Francis?
I only have one item this evening. I just want to remind residents that the village offices are closed tomorrow, so that includes both village offices and PD. That's it.
Thank you. Moving on to the approval of the consent agenda. On the agenda this evening, approve the voucher list of bills for April 18th, 2019. Approve the Village Board of Trustee regular meeting minutes, April 4, 2019. File and review the following: Historical Commission meeting minutes of February 18th, the LAC Commission, or the LAC meeting minutes of March 19th, the TV Commission of March 11th, Community Development Department, March 2019 monthly report, the Finance Department, March 2019 monthly report, the Fire Department, and the Police Department, March 29 monthly reports. A resolution authorizing the village manager to create a $40,000 purchase order for D. Ryan Tree and Landscape for 2019 cyclic tree trimming, and a resolution of the Village of Riverside to authorize the village manager to issue a purchase order to West Central Consolidated Communications for centralized dispatch services in the amount of $245,025. Does anyone need anything removed for discussion? Hearing none, I'd ask for a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. By Mr. Gisa, second by Mr. Pollak. Please call the roll.
Trustee Sedovy.
Aye.
Trustee Peters.
Aye.
Trustee Lumsden.
Aye.
Trustee Pollak.
Aye.
Trustee Valerie. Trustee Giza.
Motion carries. Next up are reports of departments, commissions, and trustee liaisons. Are there any liaison reports this evening? Hearing none, we'll move on to ordinances and resolutions. First up, a resolution of the Village of Riverside authorizing the village manager to enter into an agreement with and issue a purchase order to Visit Oak Park for marketing services in an amount not to exceed $5,000. Director Apt.
Yes, the village board approved $5,000 for marketing in our 2019 budget, and the Economic Development Commission has been discussing options for the marketing. In January, Visit Oak Park offered a co-op opportunity with matching funds to our marketing dollars. So in discussions with them, they proposed that for our $5,000, they could work with their web designer to create a microtourism page on their new website. They would create and maintain the content with standing approval for us, creating travel stories with a focus on Riverside businesses and attractions and events. And they would then match that $5,000 with $5,000 in digital marketing for Riverside-specific events. And they would also, with their travel agency, try to drive traffic to our Riverside microsite. So the Economic Development Commission reviewed the proposal. They felt that this would be a great use of our limited marketing budget and was a very cost-effective opportunity. They reviewed the formal proposal on April 4th at a special meeting and recommended approval of it. You have a copy of that proposal in your packet. It outlines both the micro page that they would be creating on their website along with their proposal for the marketing, digital marketing, which would include a Facebook carousel paid ad for showcasing key selling points and attractions, as well as some retargeted marketing, which is kind of a unique cost-effective opportunity of using our microsite as well as their site to drive traffic to people who are visiting the Visit Oak Park, and any marketing that they're doing for themselves to be able to retarget them to our page and our events and activities. So that is their proposal. We have opportunities to work with them for other future marketing opportunities. They're excited to work with us. I don't have a number yet on what the ongoing yearly fee to maintain that site would be, but they don't expect that it would be more than this initial $5,000. So at the top end, it would be $5,000 to continue to maintain that site, but it probably won't be that much. But they'll be getting back to me with numbers as they work through with their web designer on that. So we'll be accounting for that for ongoing budgeting.
Before we discuss it, ask for a motion and a second to approve the resolution. Motion by Ms. Peters, second by Mr. Pollak. Comments, questions for Director Apt?
This is a one-year commitment. Am I
gathering that point right?
Right now, this is a one-year commitment. They are interested in doing this over a long-term basis and having kind of an annual opportunity for us to do cooperative marketing and being to advertise Riverside as well as the Visit Oak Park area. So they're looking to work with their other member communities to try and do this kind of thing on an ongoing basis to provide us with that opportunity.
And is the matching grant type of thing from the Oak Park, is that as a yearly basis too? So,
Yes.
so next year, if we get 5, we're gonna get actually $10,000 worth of advertising?
Anything else? Please call the roll.
Trustee Sutton.
Aye.
Trustee Peters. Aye. Trustee Lumsden.
Aye.
Trustee Pollock.
Aye.
Trustee Valerie.
Aye.
Trustee Chiesa.
Motion carries. Next up is a resolution adopting written design standards for small wireless facilities.
Yes, back in February, we were before you with some code modifications that would require the Preservation Commission and the Village Board to review all small cells and ground-mounted utility permits. At that time, we mentioned that we still needed to bring before you formalized design standards for the village to adopt for our code. So we've been working with the village attorney on creating those standards, and you have them before you tonight. They regulate top-mounted and side-mounted installations, as well as having requirements for new poles, for them to match other poles in the area and things like that. These standards were presented to our Preservation Commission at their last meeting for comment. I haven't received any comments from them, but if changes need to be made, or they have any suggestions, or as we go through this process and start getting applications in, if we see that there's anything that we need to fine tune, we can certainly make amendments to it. But at this time, it is really important that we get something on the books and adopted, because we are starting to get applications in. So you have the ordinance before you, or the resolution before you, which would have our standards, and we can start giving those out with our applications once they're adopted.
Ask for a motion and a second to approve a resolution adopting written design standards for small wireless facilities. By Mr. Lumsden. By Mr. Sadovy. Comments, questions? Only thing I would say is really a job well done to our staff and our village attorneys on getting this done quickly and putting as much teeth into this as we can possibly have, given the overarching statutory.
As Ms. Abt indicated, it's important to get the basic rules in place. They can be tweaked, but we don't want to wait, is
Right.
my opinion.
Very nice work.
Can you share a little bit for both our Preservation Commission as well as the board and future board folks, the timeliness of this? This could be a challenge. I mean, you shared it a little bit.
Yes, so
That was very helpful.
as part of the regulations, there is a shot clock. So once a completed application has been submitted, we only have a certain number of days to approve that permit. I believe it's 60 days.
Yeah.
So because we are going to have Preservation Commission and Village Board approval of those things, staff is going to have to be very mindful of times and may have to call some special meetings, or we may have to have a Village Board meeting where that might be the only thing that's on the agenda, because we do have to meet those shot clocks. So it would require some accommodation on our commissions and boards, and if needed, but obviously we know when your meeting dates are, so we would just probably work more with the Preservation Commission to get those reviews and comments on a timely basis to be able to have them on your regular meeting agendas.
And then making sure we have a quorum. I mean, that's gonna be the biggest challenge, because the teeth are only as good if we meet the deadline.
Right, and there are some creative ways to meet that deadline if it becomes problematic. For example, the village board itself could delegate a committee to deal with these, a committee of the village board of, people who are interested, more available, and have some expertise, or are willing to spend the time to develop the expertise. So we can talk about that when it becomes
Yeah, we'll
a
make sure we
problem.
meet it.
And I think, like I said, I want to mimic, you guys did a really good job of giving something that will best protect when these come rolling through here, because the 5G is coming whether any of us want it or not.
That's correct.
And all of our kids want it anyway, so. The key here is going to be to keep it off of the triangles and off of the streets, because that's going to be the most cost-effective way for them to roll it out. And so that's going to come.
That's correct.
Smash on with us
That's right.
wanting to preserve stuff, so.
Correct.
And it's also good that the preservation group is in the middle of that. I think they're the right focus with the right intellect to really push back if we need to.
Yes.
Thank you.
Anything else? Please call the roll.
Trustee Sutton.
Aye.
Trustee Peters.
Aye.
Trustee Lumsden.
Aye.
Trustee Pollock.
Aye.
Trustee Valerie. Trustee Juza.
Motion carries. Thank you,
Thank you.
Director Rapp. And last this evening, a resolution providing the board requiring the submission of a binding public question limiting the terms of office for the President and Board of Trustees in the Village of Riverside to appear on the ballot of the electors of the Village of Riverside in the general primary election to be held on March 17, 2020. Manager Francis.
Thank you. At the February 7th meeting, term limits was brought up and discussed, and then at a subsequent meeting, there was additional detail provided by the village attorney. At that meeting, I want to point out that a trustee had asked whether or not the Village of Brookfield had term limits. And at that point in time, village staff was not aware, nor was the village attorney, but after that meeting, we did do some additional due diligence, reaching out to Brookfield, getting what is attached within the agenda packet, which is their ordinance that was approved as part of establishing the limitation of terms for elected officials. And apparently that was a referendum question, which was on a special ballot in July 1978. Additionally, staff reached out to other communities to provide some additional data with regard to comps as to whether or not other communities had term limits. Additionally, a trustee-elect had reached out to me with regard to some term limit questions that had been most recently on the April 2nd election. And so we pulled those questions as well, so the board has it as a reference. And within the question as drafted by the village attorney per the board's request, it calls for term limits of 3 consecutive terms per office, and it would be retroactive.
I'd ask for a motion and a second to approve the resolution. Sorry, by Mr. Ballerine, second by Mr. Lumsden. Is there further discussion on this item? Please call the roll.
Well, I think there is some further discussion. There was a memo prepared that we discussed in February that I wanted to make some clarification of, because I had the opportunity to talk to Attorney Mars on it. Unfortunately, he's not present, but the purpose of his memo was to document alternate language for whatever choice we may make as far as a ballot question for the general public. It was by no means intended of a survey of the surrounding communities or a comprehensive survey. I think the discussion that ensued kind of took it in that fact, and there were some comments made to the effect of we'd be precedent setting and doing what we were recommending at that time, which was 2 consecutive term limits for both the village president and village trustees. And that ended up not being the case, which we found out, our neighboring community of Brookfield actually had those term limits. So in light of that, and there's also some comments made about overwhelming opposition to term limits. And again, I haven't seen it. I think the board was privy to 4 or 5 emails and 1 public comment on it. We heard 1 public comment today in support of term limits. By no means is that a quorum or any indication. So as a result of that, I would like to make a motion to amend the motion and resolution to reflect, instead of 3 consecutive term limits, elected terms, to modify that to 2 for each, the village president and the village trustee.
So we have a motion to amend the language of the proposed question.
I would second that.
Second by Mr. Gisa. Further comment on that? Please call the roll on the amendment.
On the motion to amend.
Correct.
Trustee Sutton.
Aye.
Trustee Peters.
No.
Trustee Lumsden.
Aye.
Trustee Pollock.
No.
Trustee Valerie.
No.
Trustee Giza.
Aye.
President Sells.
No. So we're now back to the language as presented in the packet. Is there further comment on that? If not, please call the roll.
One more comment. I was asked a question by a few people of, is this personal? Is this intended at any one person? Obviously, there's 2 people sitting up here that it affects, and I've made the statement publicly that it has nothing to do with the people. It's a principle for me. I hope you believe that. I would like to take partial credit for getting Trustee Pollock involved in local government. By no means am I looking to shove him out. I do believe that there are higher and better uses for his talents than running for a third term on the village trustee, as a village trustee. But I do want to make sure everyone understands it's not dissatisfaction with what's happening, it's fear of what could happen. And I do believe strongly in that and still do. So that's best I can explain my position.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Further comments? Please call the roll.
Trustee Setterly.
Aye.
Trustee Peters.
Aye.
Trustee Lumsden.
Aye.
Trustee Pollock.
Aye.
Trustee Valerie.
Aye.
Trustee Giza.
Motion carries. We have no need for considerations this evening nor new business. We do, however, have to have a executive session this evening to discuss setting the price for the lease of village property, to discuss probable or imminent and pending litigation, to discuss the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees, and to review executive session meeting minutes. So I'd ask for a motion to adjourn to executive session, not to reconvene. No final action will be taken. Motion by Mr. Lumsden. Second. By Mr. Setterly. Please call the roll.
Aye.
Trustee Peters. Aye. Trustee Lumsden.
Aye.
Trustee Pollock.
Aye.
Trustee Valerie.
Aye.
Trustee Giza.
Before we go, I just want to say, this is our last meeting, and it's been an honor sitting with you all. So, staff has been great, you guys have been great. We haven't all agreed, but I think at the end of the day, we all go out and have a beer afterwards, and we enjoy ourselves. So thank you very much. It's been an honor.
I appreciate that. We will have ample time to say a lot of thank yous and good wishes at our next meeting. You have one more that you have to be
Well,
at. So
I just wanted to, I can talk to you guys now.
it'll be short, but you definitely need to be there. Thank you, everyone. Good night.